The finished project for Metroid Prime 4 seemed to be a mixed bag for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that find it extremely enjoyable, and there's a lot of people find it very different than the past Prime games and something that they really didn't enjoy as much as those games. And we know that the game had some troubled development, but thanks to a recent interview with Famitsu, we actually have a lot of information about the development of this game, the processes that Nintendo went with, and I have a lot of opinions that I want to share with you. Now, this is a loose translation by somebody on Reset Era, so please take that in consideration if there's some words that are a little bit off or some spelling that's off. But let's dive into the interview. The interviewer starts off by saying, "Please tell us about the development process for this title." The development team states, "The project began when we received a development request from Nintendo of America. They asked us to create a numbered entry, a mainline title in the Metroid Prime series. We aimed to create a game that preserved the essence of Prime while also delivering new experiences. Simultaneously, we wanted to center the story around the relationship between Samus and Sylux, something we had planned to explore in a future title." Now, it's always interesting to hear this. It always seems like Nintendo just has these ideas and they're just like, okay, let's do them. You know what I mean? And I know that's kind of how it works, but I feel like sometimes Nintendo just has ideas without planning them out properly. They're just like, hey, let's do this thing. And as you can see here in a second, it didn't really pan out the way they thought it would. Because the team is then asked, what were the most challenging aspects and the points you focused on most during the long development period? And they stated, the project changed development companies midway, and we had to restart at Retro Studios. However, Retro Studios didn't have the infrastructure in place to develop a Metroid Prime title at this time, so we had to start by building that foundation. Additionally, while we outsourced background models and cutscenes creation, producing background data alone required numerous subcontractors. This involves selecting those companies initially and managing them throughout. Our process management staff were incredibly helpful in balancing both schedule and quality. We're grateful to them, but we're also thankful to the many studios that created the data. The key point we focused on was getting new staff to understand our production philosophy. It took time for them to grasp that they weren't just making a game, but building a player experience. And it talks about how this is a Metroid Prime game, so they had to kind of teach the team about what Metroid Prime is about. But once again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's funny how Nintendo didn't even do any research, it seems like. They're just like, hey, get Retro, let's make a Metroid Prime game, and Retro's just in shambles technically when it comes to the Prime series. They haven't made one since the Wii, so you can't blame them. They didn't really have the same developers there. The team has been completely different. It just wasn't the development team for Prime yet, and they had to kind of rebuild one. So yeah, it just seems like Nintendo has these ideas. They're like, hey, let's do a Metroid Prime game again. You know, fans want that. It's been a while, without any research as to like, can we do this? Do we have the original team? Do we have the original people that worked on this game? You know what I mean? It just, once again, just seems like Nintendo does stuff without really thinking about what they're doing. The interviewer then states, it's been 18 years since the last numbered title. Were there any changes you consciously made to reflect the times? And the development team states, at the start of the project, perhaps due to the influence of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, we saw a lot of comments on the internet saying, we want to play an open world Metroid. However, Metroid's core element of increasing the amount of explorable areas by unlocking powers is not very compatible with a freedom to go anywhere from the beginning of open worlds. Thus, we thought to design a limited area that could be freely explored, and have that be a hub that could connect to other areas. Then we thought if one could move around on the bike in a satisfying way in that area, it could be a segment that mitigates the tension from exploration and paces the whole game. Oh boy. So for a lot of people, the biggest issue with them was this desert. It was just open and barren, and it just didn't feel like it fit in this game. And I've heard a lot of people even say that it just feels like almost the desert was made by like a different team or something. It felt so off. And based on this interview, I'm starting to wonder if it was in a way. Like, it's almost sounding as if Nintendo just heard people wanted to see a open world Metroid game and decided to just maybe at the last second say, hey, we could make one of those. We'll just make it a hub world. Because it would also explain why the desert's so empty and why there's only like 6 shrines in the entire desert and just so underutilized. So yeah, it's a little strange, but apparently this was all made because of reports of them hearing fans wanted an open world Metroid game. Which is strange also, because I don't know what fans have been saying this. At least I really haven't heard too many fans want an open world Metroid game. Maybe these are people that just played Breath of the Wild and wanted this. But yeah, of course Nintendo wants to live off of that hype of Breath of the Wild and have an open world experience, because look how well it did with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But they even admitted, like, it just doesn't work with the formula of Metroid, which I don't know per se. I mean, if they decided to move in the way of making this a true Metroidvania, it could work. Something like Hollow Knight could be really cool in like a 3D way. And there's ways to make it work. I mean, if you take the traditions of Zelda, it also has a problem because you need specific items to go through linear dungeons. And as you can see, they had to work around that. Where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both have more simplified dungeons without those items, which a lot of people don't like. So I can completely understand they don't want to mess with the, you know, classic Metroid Prime formula by changing anything thanks to an open world. Although I think there could have been a better way they could do this. In my opinion, it's either go fully open world or don't do it at all. And it seems like they decided to go halfway in, where they kind of called it a hub world, but it being so completely empty and barren left a lot of people feeling about it. But now you know, this whole hub world was based on people demanding for an open world game. So you can thank those people. They continue to state, in the end, the game took much longer than expected to finish, and we realized that players' impressions toward open world games had changed. That being said, development had already been reset once before, when we started again from scratch with Retro Studios. So backtracking development again was out of the question, and we resolved to move forward with our original vision. During this time, shooting games and action games went through evolutions, with an increase in game speed in particular. But taking in those changes would have made it difficult to construct the tempo of an adventure game, so we actively chose to not take them into account. Therefore, I think this game is pretty much divorced from the changing of times. This just sounds stranger and stranger the more I read. So it's almost as if, thanks to the restarted development and how long it took to make this game, they were kind of going through internal struggles with what they wanted to do with the game. There are different things that they may have wanted to change thanks to the new change of tempo with adventure games and action games and shooting games at the time. So there's probably some other things that they wanted to do at one time. They also seemed like they maybe wanted to go back on the open world thing, where they said they started to realize players started to not like open worlds as much anymore, which is funny. It's like they started off not having a plan for an open world. They heard players wanted it back when they started development. This is probably right after Breath of the Wild, and everybody loved Breath of the Wild. So they're like, you know what, we got to do something. So they implemented the hub world, which is the desert. And then a couple years later, they heard people not really liking open worlds because lots of them are empty or not done right. So they tried to backtrack, but they realized we can't restart development again. It just seems sloppy. It seems like it's all over the place. There's ideas on the table that they want to do, and then there's change of heart and change of mind, and like, maybe we shouldn't do this, or maybe we should do it this way. It seems like the entire development process of this game really was just a mess. They then ask what meaning is conveyed by this subtitle Beyond, and they state the development team intended it to mean transcending time and space. They then ask what is the biggest appeal of Metroid Prime 4 in a nutshell, and the team states, technically, the stunning graphics using massive texture data. We fully maximize the hardware's potential, like maintaining a steady 60 FPS on Nintendo Switch and 120 FPS on Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. As a game, we want players to experience the unique genre of first-person adventure. If they play through to the end, we believe it will be a memorable experience that goes beyond the simple satisfaction of clearing the game, which is something that I commended the game heavily for. The game is beautiful. It is the best looking game Nintendo has probably ever made. It is beautiful in every location. I mean, seriously, they really outdid themselves, and the fact that it runs so well, not just on Switch 2, but on Switch 1 as well, is truly impressive. But unfortunately, it looks like this was indeed their true purpose and their true goal when making this game, to have a beautiful, really good running game. But some of the gameplay kind of just got swept under the rug or something. They then asked, could you elaborate on features unique to the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition? Specifically, what did you focus on when adjusting the feel of the mouse controls? And the team states, since this is primarily a first-person game, we aim to ensure mouse control felt satisfying for players accustomed to it, meeting their expectations. We spent considerable time fine-tuning camera movement and cursor control, and included numerous customizable options for players. However, as we learned more about the Joy-Con 2's capabilities, we realized that the seamless switching between mouse and stick controls would be a truly unique and excellent experience for the Nintendo Switch 2. Consequently, we dedicated a significant portion of our development time to creating technology that automatically distinguishes between mouse and stick inputs. minimizing unintentional actions. The team worked extremely hard to make this control scheme the best it could be, so we are very happy to see such positive reactions to the Nintendo Switch 2 Experience event. We look forward to more people experiencing this control scheme after the game's release. They then asked, when creating Planet Veros, what aspects did you pay particular attention to? The team states, the staff in charge of art and environment construction put a lot of effort into how to express the otherworldly jungle in Fury Green, in the first area you explore. Of course, we believe the other areas also have unique environments, in particular, the visualization of the Lemorn culture, symbolized by its structures, showcases the exceptional talent of Steve Berg, who was in charge of concept art, and is characterized by a sense of unity and elegant curves. They then state, please tell us the reason for adopting the new psychic ability element in this title and any points you focused on. The team states, while playing with the prototype, we came up with the idea of controlling the charge beam. We've had it programmed and tested and determined it would add a new layer of gameplay, but then we asked, what makes Samus capable of this? That led us to tie it to psychic abilities. Later, when development was transferred to Retro Studios, we asked them to add other ideas for psychic abilities. Interesting stuff here. First off, you notice how it talked about later when handed to Retro Studios. So lots of this game seemed to have stayed even though they restarted development for a lot of it. The psychic abilities and the ability to control Samus's beam using the psychic beam was something that was already planned before they restarted development, which is very interesting. You're about to learn some more information about that here soon. But once again, this is just a case of Nintendo being Nintendo. We know that they are a gameplay first, story second company, and the same thing happens here. They evolved the whole story around psychic abilities and stuff with the psychic crystal based off of the idea for the gameplay mechanic of controlling Samus's beam, which once again, gameplay is the most important #1 thing for Nintendo, which I have always been a pretty big fan of that. The interviewer states, a new element is the bike-like vehicle Viola. Please tell us the reason for adopting this element and any particular points you focused on. Also, are there any tips for mastering it? The team states, when we conceived the freely navigable hub area, Soul Valley, the issue of movement speed arose simultaneously. Walking across the vast areas, even with the freedom of movement, can become stressful. While Samus possesses high-speed abilities like the Boost Ball and Speed Booster, we determined that riding a bike was the optimal solution to satisfy both the perspective of moving freely and quickly across large areas, and the perspective of looking cool. The key point was achieving that purely enjoyable feeling of just piloting it. Retro Studios, programmers, and game designers fine-tuned this, and we feel it resulted in a satisfyingly responsive feel. Furthermore, the map creation team crafted maps with varied terrain that truly let you experience that responsive feel. Once you can freely control the drift for directional changes, it allows for both that satisfying feel and the necessary gameplay responsiveness. Now, this is pretty interesting if you care about the timelines, but they ask, please tell us what you can about the timeline of this game. I assume it takes place after Metroid Federation Force, but how does it relate to the other games? The team states, it's set after Super Metroid and before Metroid Fusion. However, since Samus has jumped into another dimension beyond time and space in this game, you won't need to worry about the timeline going forward. We deliberately set it up that way. We wanted to allow for a free and unique setting for Metroid Prime without affecting the 2D Metroid series. So that changes some things. I'm not diving into all that today, but it's also interesting how Nintendo likes to just restart canon and just like make things different just for the sake of people being able to jump in and understand the story. It kind of sucks for lore fans, but yeah, you do with that what you will. Now here they talk about the creation and inclusion of Sylux in this game, and states, when developing Metroid Prime Hunters, the game designers at NST, the development company, came up with concepts for each hunter. Among them was the idea that Sylux harbors hatred toward the Federation and Samus. At the time, I specifically asked them not to decide on the reason behind it. I did this so that if I ever wanted to create a game centered around this reason, the existing concept would have become a hindrance. While laying groundwork in the ending of Metroid Prime 3 and Federation Force, we finally decided on the specifics of what happened in the past of this game. That's the footage Samus sees, resonating with Sylux's consciousness, like occasional flashbacks. Due to his self-righteous and narrow-minded nature, Sylux came to resent Samus and the Galactic Federation. The suit design, while based on the original colors and design, was redesigned by Retro Studios artists. In terms of lore, we established that the Galactic Federation modified the suit using nanotechnology. I believe it resulted in a more refined and stylish design. So it seemed like the plans for Sylux was something that developers always wanted to do something with. Story-wise, aside, they were slowly setting stuff up at the end of Prime 3 and then with Metroid Prime Hunters, and they were finally given the opportunity to do so. So it almost seems like they kind of want to make this character a new main antagonist for Samus, which I actually really enjoy that. I would love to see this character in other spin-offs like Smash Brothers and stuff, and having more lore and story with them, eventually showing his face and everything, I think could be really cool. The interviewer states, "This time, while we prepared plenty of those quintessential Metroid moments of solitary exploration, we've also incorporated cooperation with the Galactic Federation forces. What was the intention behind this?" The team states, "In our approach to game design, we often start by setting the theme we want players to experience in that title. Normally, when players clear a game, they press the A button without hesitation, right? But for Metroid Prime 4, we wanted to make them feel hesitation and conflict there. That's why we decided to have Galactic Federation soldiers also be transported to planet Veros. With that foundation, we then considered how the soldiers should behave within the game to feel realistic. Rather than examining specific elements one by one, like adding escort missions or engaging casual users, we determined each character's AI and event specifications to evoke the feeling if a character is cowardly, they'll be weak in combat. So you have to protect them, right? Now this is actually something I can get behind because I did experience this. At the end of the game, it was something I kind of just stopped and stared at the screen for a while, and it's something that only the Galactic Federation soldiers could have added to the feel of this game. I actually really love the ending. It's my favorite ending out of the entire trilogy that comes before it, and I felt like it actually had some impact to it. It actually had some weight, and I was a pretty big fan of what they decided to do, even though it was pretty risky. It didn't feel like, oh, Samus has saved this race and saved the day and she heads back home. Like, this time it actually left me sitting there thinking, wow, that was pretty insane. For this last part, it states, starting with Mackenzie, the Galactic Federation characters are designed to feel relatable as players progress through the game. What did you prioritize in their personality and dialogue? And the team states, we decided on the characters' personalities based on their role. Since Mackenzie is the engineer, also serves as the game's guide, we wanted him to have a bright and lighthearted feel. We wanted him to be skilled at developing items, so we made him a talented technician. But to keep him from coming across as obnoxious, we made him a bit absent-minded and timid, which is funny because people still find him extremely obnoxious. For the sniper Tokabi, we imagine a hunter who is quiet, solitary, and a mysterious aura. He often acts alone throughout the game, so we made him that kind of character. Sergeant Duke and Private Armstrong are like a stubborn old man and a girly girl. Their conversations and acting were designed to make the contrast between the two seem endearing. Also, when they act together with Samus, they were programmed to show their characteristics: the reckless private, who tends to rush in first, and the calm sergeant, who is reliable and has strong firepower. I actually designed events centered around them, but unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, I couldn't make them happen. That's interesting. The android VUE-995 was designed as the pilot of a giant mech. Since the other characters have strong personalities, we deliberately opted for a robotic, inorganic expression for him. A personal point of focus was that he can launch multiple missiles simultaneously from his shoulders. I specifically asked the animator to depict their trajectory using a pattern common in Japanese anime. Their dialogue was handled by Retro Studios writers, and their acting was supervised by Retro Studios movie staff. They handled everything with great care and enthusiasm, including several retakes, and we implemented many of their suggestions. Furthermore, the Japanese dialogue wasn't simply translated. It was simplified to fit the game while expressing each character's personality, and rewritten to sound more realistic and natural. This wasn't done by a writer, but by game designer Taro Kudo. So yeah, it looks like they spent a lot of time with the animations and the characters and the voice acting to these side characters, and I actually noticed them and enjoyed them for the most part. I know a lot of people were pretty upset by that, and like I said, previous times. I actually enjoyed the desert. I enjoyed the side characters. My main issue was the actual design of the levels and stuff they did with that. But overall, like, I think the characters were handled pretty well if they absolutely had to have them here. I think people kind of blew them out of proportion, made it seem like they were like the end of the world, but they weren't. Now, we do get a little bit more information by a well-known game journalist and sometimes insider, Reese Kiwi Talks Riley, that states the new translated interview with Tanabe regarding Prime 4 is the final piece of snippets of info that connects the dots for me that I've been hearing for 2 or more years that I couldn't quite grasp my head around. Retro never got to truly make a Prime 4 from scratch. They had to follow the original template on the Bandai Namco version to a certain extent, because Nintendo had already burnt too much money 2 years in, and Retro was tasked with executing on what was a flawed concept from the start. Primes 1 through 3 walked a perfect line, in my opinion, of Western and Eastern design sensibilities, but Prime 4 has a lot of tonal whiplash, and it's because Retro had to try and salvage some stuff from the original version. And after reading that interview, this just makes so much sense. There were ideas already in place, like the whole psychic abilities and stuff that was already planned from Bandai, and it seems like all these ideas and a lot of the parts of this game were already in motion, but for some reason it just wasn't clicking with Bandai. I guess they were missing some very important Metroid elements, and you can feel that. It feels like there's like this glossy coating of Metroid Prime where you have your item pickups, you have your boss battles, and you have some very simple puzzle solutions that were already done in past Prime games where you might say, oh yeah, I remember that, or I had to do a double bomb blast in my morph ball to reach this. It's stuff like that where you're like, this looks like Metroid. It kind of feels like Metroid, but the heart of Metroid isn't here. That's why you have so many long, straightaway, linear corridor sections. That's why this game is extremely lacking in the puzzle department or the free exploration and the backtracking. It's missing those core elements because Retro Studios had to come in and pretty much work with this reheated food. They had to take this meal that was already created and started by Bandai and make something new out of it. And it's just kind of like they had their arms behind their back here. Kiwi goes on to state that the interview pretty much confirms Prime 5 will be a thing unless Prime 4 bombs, as Retro has built up the production pipeline to become the Metroid studio. That's something I've been saying for a while. That Donkey Kong won't be a thing going forward, as Retro is different now. That absolutely stinks, as someone who thinks Tropical Freeze is the best 2D platformer ever made, and kind of thinking we may not get another 2D retro-made Donkey Kong game truly hurts my heart more than you could ever imagine. That's for another video. But if Prime 1 through 3 are the Lord of the Rings films, then Prime 4 is the Hobbit films, plagued by meddling and not enough time for Peter Jackson / Retro to do what they truly do. And if that's the analogy that we're going off of here, I really hope they don't try to be like The Hobbit and make a trilogy of new Metroid Prime games for 4, 5, and 6, and they all feel like 4, because that's going to really stink. Hopefully now with Retro working on the game from the ground up, it can actually be something it was meant to be, something that actually feels like a follow-up to Primes 1 through 3. Only time will tell. So at first, I didn't know if I really wanted this game to sell well because I didn't want another Prime 4. I'm just so mixed on the game. There's so many good things about the game, but it's so lacking in feeling like a Metroid Prime game to me. So if they actually can make a proper Metroid Prime experience that feels like a follow-up after 3, then maybe it is a really good idea for this to sell well. Like, I really do hope Prime 4 sells enough so I can see what a true vision could have been from Retro from the very beginning. But man, what a crazy development cycle. This game just has been through everything. So hopefully the next game, if we do get another one, does a lot better. But let me know in the comments down below if this answered any of the questions that you had about this game. Let me know how you feel about Prime 4 and what you're hoping to see in Prime 5, and did anything here surprise you or not. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Metroid, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a blessed day, guys. See ya.